Hello. A heart surgeon has said he probably saved the life of a baby by carrying out a world-first operation using stem cells from placentas. Professor Massimo Caputo from the Bristol Heart Institute used pioneering stem cell injections to correct a heart defect in baby Finley, who is now 2 years old. After conventional methods failed, the new procedure was tried using stem cells sourced from a placenta bank. Professor Caputo hopes to develop the technology so children born with congenital cardiac disease won't need as many operations. Joining me to talk about this is David Burrows. David is a former MP and the co-founder of the Conservative Christian Fellowship. David, thanks ever so much for taking the time out to speak to me today. David, this procedure that I've just gone through very quickly used a placenta bank, and you saw the importance of these banks, or the potential for these banks, all the way back in 2008. I wonder if you could just explain to people, what are they, why are they important, and perhaps you could also remind people of what it was you were trying to achieve back in 2008.
Yes, so back in the days, I was a member of Parliament, going into a bill which was the Human Fertilisation and Embryo Bill, seeking to scrutinise and challenge what the then government's attempt and intent was to be world leaders in research into embryos and their supposed life-saving treatments. And so the whole direction of travel of that bill was to not only, as had already been legislated for, which was research into embryos, but also to move, because of the lack of embryos, to look at the options in the lab to create not just human embryos, but human-animal hybrid embryos. So it's going even further. And in fact, you know, it's not kind of the leadership that I'd want the UK to be giving in terms of going way what many would think is ethically unsound, and actually scientifically not particularly sound as well. So I was in the minority, but nevertheless, with others, didn't just want to restrain what I saw was ethically and as a Christian morally wrong by seeking to interfere with good order in relation to human and animals, whether it's in research phase or indeed anything further, but also to challenge the reality on the ground, which I and I'm uninitiated. I had well, 6 children, I think there was about 4 or so, and then I didn't appreciate much about the umbilical cord blood and placenta, which is obviously thrown away at birth, and recognizing that that does have wonderful stem cells that can have life-saving value. And so it then took me down a route to actually say, okay, let's restrain what we believe is bad, but also promote what we believe is good, and to ensure that the debate was shifted. And we then developed an all-party group and encouraged the government to put funding and support into banking cord blood, which is often thrown away, but also then to expand the use of it. And it's wonderfully to hear that what has been known for some time, that it's alongside bone marrow, cord blood can provide support for immune deficiencies and genetic disorders and blood disorders, but to see it now have the potential and indeed used to help save a young life through regenerating a heart is fantastic.
So I'm going to ask you for your reaction to that in a moment, but I mean, I just want to draw out one of the important distinctions, or a couple of the important distinctions that you drew there in what you just said, which is there are adult stem cells, and we know that they've been used successfully in a number of treatments. There is stem cells that, as you talked about, that the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Bill was gearing up for a lot of work around stem cells from embryos, so involved the destruction of embryos, and this is a different category again. It's the stem cells taken from placentas. So just want people to understand that distinction. So let me just go back to that point that you were just starting to talk about then. So what's your reaction? So having been so involved in this way back and sort of seeing the potential for this, what's your reaction now to this great news about this little boy's life seemingly being saved because of one of these placenta banks?
I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, it's wonderful. Any life saved is a source of joy. What is also wonderful is that this opens the door in many ways to to a lot of other therapeutic treatments that, whilst there's been an understanding for some years of stem cells, which is these special, building block cells that can develop and grow. It's often the public debate that we're seeing is often in relation to in the lab with embryo cells, but to see the development and what in this particular instance was the growth that through a special procedure that was developed, sort of plaster effect of together and growing these cord blood stem cells that grew and regenerated and were able to develop within the heart to enable. And the wonderful thing about this is that why it's so naturally wonderful is that it's taken off all the medication, all other intervention, and it was through the natural growth of these stem cells. And it's lovely, isn't it? These were stem cells that came from a placenta from another birth, and so it's life, regenerating life, which it seems to make sense that allow God's good order just to develop in its natural way, and it's allowing and it's working within the grain of that good order, which is so exciting and so wonderful, life transforming. And I suppose the thing which it reminds me is back in 2008, as in lots of other times, you often are somewhat of a lone voice, and people think, well, come on, go with the science. This is where we should be going. This is the future. You're standing in the way of all these therapeutic treatments. A lot of very good charities were saying, hang on, you've got to allow hybrid embryo research. But when one sees these results, one says, well, look, surely more attention, more investment should go into helping to develop this wonderful opportunity to and it's based on such good ethics, and indeed we see good scientific outcomes when it leads to the life of little Finley. So it's wonderful. It's a great good news story at Christmas, but it also has such great potential. I mean, that there's lots of other areas of therapy and treatment that people have hoped for stem cells, not least in cord blood, and maybe this will give a shot in the arm for further investment and research in what we all believe is an ethically sound approach.
Yeah, and that's what I want to move you on to. So you wanted it to be these to be routine. So are they routine? And then perhaps I could ask you to sort of talk a little bit more about what you see as potential, what that shot in the arm looks like, what the next steps might be.
Yeah. So off the back of that bill, I thought, okay, how can we promote what I believe is good? So it was as much also to raise awareness, because many people aren't actually aware of much around the cord, umbilical cord, or the placenta beyond it being thrown away. And so it was trying to raise awareness. So I introduced a private members bill to ensure that every birth egg was the option of the mother and father to be able to enable their the placenta cord to be able to be then harvested effectively for the stem cells of the cord blood stem cells. And it was as much to just raise that option. What it led to actually was the government to realise, hang on, yeah, we realise that we should do more, but routine is just not going to be practicable. And in fact, the demand, they would say, isn't there at this stage. So what they did do was create a much better information exercise and give people options of where they can. I mean, there's always been private banks which have a different history, a mixed history. But in the National Health Service, blood transfusion service, they've transplant service, they've now do much more in providing collection banks, because the issue actually was not so much ended up as the issue of the need for routine collection, but the fact that in some areas of the country, from the bone marrow transplants, particularly those from Black and minority ethnic communities, they aren't getting the matches, and so there's a gross inequality out there, and it's cord blood that can often provide the solution. And so as a result of this bill, there was a big strategy that was launched and more money put into collections, particularly in areas where there was a disadvantage for those not receiving bone marrow transplants. So it was all around ensuring that that area, particularly with blood-related disorders, received the supply of cord. What the stories that come out here shows that actually there's other therapies, there's other treatments which can save the NHS huge amounts of money. I mean, if we're thinking about the amount it costs really to collect and store cord blood and placenta, which is often just wasted, to be able to store and then be able to use in appropriate circumstances, compared to the huge costs that that were outlaid, first of all, for Finley and others, going through heart failures and lots of interventions, to actually say, actually, if we use this wonderful, simple, previously often discarded resource to be able to then regenerate. And so what we need now, really, I think, is not necessarily routine collection. We need to keep up the supply, but we need more investment in research to be able to develop the opportunities that we saw for Finley to ensure that others can benefit from what is a life-saving resource that is out there. And every day this resource is either collected or discarded. And maybe we need to look at how we can collect more, but also put more into research to make sure that we shift the dial away from okay, there's legislation for research into hybrid embryos, but let's put much more research, much more focus and attention on what is a wonderful, ethically driven approach to allowing beautiful cord blood cells to be regenerated to give life to others.
Well, David, can I say thank you for your foresight in seeing the potential for this, and also thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me about this today. Thank you.
Thanks so much.